There is very little that is more painful than the way that narcissists can just throw away the relationship that meant so much to us. The way that they can show us that we just weren't good enough for them to the point where it doesn't even seem to faze them to lose us, even after years and years of what we thought was a meaningful relationship. And I think it's useful to explore the question, is anyone good enough for the narcissist, especially when we're questioning ourselves and blaming ourselves and buying into the narrative that the narcissist is selling us, that it's our fault, that it's our failure. So that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Is anyone ever really good enough for the narcissist? Welcome to Looking Behind the Mirror, where we explore narcissism and take our lives back as we make sense out of nonsense. As a quick disclaimer, everything I say is based on my opinions and my personal experiences. I'm not a professional, and if you're really struggling, I encourage you to seek professional help. I am providing links below for you. Okay, I guess we can't ignore the elephant cat in the room. Marshall is making a very rare appearance in today's video. He's usually scared off by everything, including cameras and lights, but here he is. So yeah, he's still around. He's just a scaredy cat. We'll see how long this lasts. Say hi, Marshall. Hi. Okay. So what I'm going to do in today's video is go over several reasons that narcissists give you as to why you weren't good enough for them. You were a disappointment and now they've got to move on to somebody else, or you're just not worth it anymore. And I'm going to explain how it can be pretty easy to buy into these things because they sound reasonable in some situations, and they would apply in some situations between quote unquote normal people. But they are projected onto narcissistic relationships, and you are meant to take the blame for things that you really had no control over. And I know that might sound a little convoluted, but hopefully it makes sense as we go along in this video. The first reason that you might not be quote unquote good enough for a narcissist anymore is you could no longer be controlled. Maybe you started to see through the games and the manipulations and the lies, and they couldn't control the narrative anymore. They couldn't bullshit you anymore as to what they wanted, what they thought, or what they were saying to you. Narcissists are very, very big on controlling their relationships, and that means controlling you, controlling the narrative, controlling how everything is being looked at. And if they start to feel like they don't have complete control over you, they will start to lose interest in maintaining a relationship of any kind with you. They really have no use for people that they can't control and manipulate, and it's very, very uncomfortable for them, because if they can't control somebody, to them it feels very threatening, because it really aggravates their insecurities of feeling like they're irrelevant and that they are not important and that nobody cares what they have to say. So their extreme black and white thinking leads them to feel like if they don't have 100% control over every little thing you do and every little thing you think, then that must mean that they don't matter at all to you and they are a completely irrelevant person. Now, the way they will frame this, they're not going to come right out and say, I can't control you anymore. They will say things like, you're really selfish, or you don't care what I think anymore, or you don't listen to me anymore. And they will really double down on this idea that you're supposed to just do whatever they say and you're supposed to just believe everything they tell you. And when you're in the middle of an extremely emotional, upsetting, sometimes traumatic situation, it can be really hard to think clearly and to see clearly that really what they're saying is that you're not just buying into everything they say anymore, and you're not letting them control your emotions anymore. That's really what they're saying when they're telling you how selfish you are and how you don't listen to them and how you don't understand them and what yada, yada, yada. They're trying to make you feel like there's something wrong with you and that you failed them somehow, when in reality, maybe you've just taken a little of your autonomy back. Maybe you've just developed a little bit of confidence. Maybe you've just developed a little bit of awareness of the reality of this relationship and this situation. And of course, in reality, there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with you for developing a little bit of awareness and seeing things for what they really are. Another reason that a narcissist might decide that you're, quote, not good enough for them anymore is you don't fit the fantasy in their head. Narcissists don't see you for who you really are, and they are not interested in who you really are or who anyone really is. They have an image, they have an idea, they have a script in their head that they are superimposing onto you. And if you don't fit that fantasy, if you don't fit that narrative, in their mind, you've failed them and you're not good enough. But this is something that's really impossible for anyone to do. And one of many reasons that this is impossible is that the narcissist doesn't even communicate this to you. So you'd have to read their mind to understand how it is they view you, and then you'd have to magically become whatever it is they think you are in their head. And there's no way to do that. They're not even going to be able to communicate that to you, even if they tried. And even if they could, it would be something that would be constantly evolving. So even if you could understand what it is they want you to be, and even if there was any good reason for you to become a completely different person just to please somebody who will never appreciate you, that person, that character is going to be constantly evolving, and nobody can ever just magically be this fantasy that somebody else is imagining they are. And this is something that the narcissist is going to blame you for. They imagine that you are someone that's going to solve all their problems. If this is a romantic relationship, you're going to be the one that's going to be there forever. This is it. They've finally found the perfect person. And then one day, for any random reason, they just are going to suddenly see that you aren't this perfect imaginary fantasy person in their head. And they're going to blame you for that. And of course, that's nothing that you have any control over. That's nothing that is ever even communicated to you. And they're going to frame that by saying things like, you're not the same person I fell in love with. Or, you lied to me about this or that. You said you were this kind of person, but really you're that kind of person. They will frame it as if you purposefully pretended to be something you weren't, and you betrayed them and you changed who you were. Of course, in real life, people do actually change over time, right? I mean, slowly, gradually, we all change a little bit. Most of us don't change radically in a short period of time. We know that dealing with narcissists, but this isn't really what they're talking about. But they will make you feel like you changed. You were wonderful and amazing and awesome when they met you, and now you're just worthless. You're just a huge disappointment. But really, you didn't change. Their image of you changed. Their realization that you are not the fantasy person in their head is what changed. So when they say things to you like, you're not the same person you used to be, while something like that can apply to a real relationship with normal people, they're going to project that onto you and make you feel like that's what's happening here. And of course, it's probably not going to make a lot of sense to you, because that's not what's happening. What's really happening is they just had, What's really happening is they just had a moment of realization that you are not a fantasy person and that you are an actual real human being. Another reason that a narcissist might suddenly think that you're not good enough for them is you couldn't solve their emotional problems. This is a big one, and I think it runs a huge gamut of all kinds of problems that they can have. If they are somebody who is easily bored, which most of them are, and angry all the time, their insecurities, their frustrations that things don't magically turn out the way they want, that they aren't actually the center of attention everywhere they go. All of these emotional problems that they have, you were supposed to solve all of those. You were supposed to magically make everything awesome for them every day for the rest of their life. And you can't do that. For one thing, you can't solve somebody else's emotional problems for them, right? They have to do that. And for another thing, these are emotional problems that the narcissist can't even admit that they have. So if they have an anger problem, they're going to frame that as, you make me so angry all the time. It's your fault. If they have a problem being bored all the time, it's going to be, you are so boring. You're so boring to be with. If they have a problem with feeling insecure about themselves, feeling unimportant, irrelevant, they're going to say, you don't pay enough attention to me. You don't listen to me. You aren't affectionate enough. You aren't like you used to be, when really it's a problem with them. So they can't even admit that they have these problems. And so, you know, the first step to addressing any problem is admitting you have one. And so these are problems that are never, ever going to resolve themselves. These are problems that are never going to go away unless the narcissist has a radical shift of perception and attitude, right? And so you're in a relationship with somebody who has problems that they absolutely refuse to address or acknowledge, and they are blaming those problems on you, and they're blaming you for not solving those problems. And once they realize that being with you isn't going to magically make all of their problems go away, that's when they're going to say things like, you're boring, you make me angry, you're annoying, you don't listen, you don't do anything the way I like. And then you're going to be not good enough for them anymore. When really, this is something you have no control over. And this is something that comes from ridiculous expectations that someone put on you and never even was able to communicate. Another reason that a narcissist might suddenly view you as somebody who's not good enough for them is you didn't fall hard enough on your sword for them, or you didn't fall on your sword for them. Why don't you come sit up here? Why don't you just come up here? Narcissists really expect you to be, quote, loyal to them, to sacrifice for them, to exist solely for their sake. And they really have extremely lopsided, double standard expectations of how much you're supposed to give to them. You're supposed to solve all their problems. You're supposed to really put yourself out there, risk everything, sacrifice everything if you really cared about them. And they will never offer you any appreciation for any of that because they expect it. You're supposed to completely sacrifice everything for their sake. So if they perceive that you have not fallen hard enough on your sword, they're going to look at you as a traitor and somebody who doesn't care about them. And what good are you then, right? And another thing that makes this even more difficult is this has nothing to do with how hard you've tried to please them or how much you've sacrificed or how much you've given up. They will never recognize any of that. This has everything to do with how well things are going for them, which you really don't have any control over. So you can sacrifice everything and give up everything you have and actually lose a lot. You can actually have a lot of loss and damage and consequences for doing this. And if things don't happen to go their way, the narcissist will not recognize anything you've lost or sacrificed. All they will see is they don't have what they want, and that's your fault. I thought a really good example of this, funny enough, just the other day, I watched the movie Superbad for the very first time. I'm not necessarily recommending it to anybody. It wasn't my idea to watch this movie, but the character that Jonah Hill plays, Seth, really demonstrates what I'm talking about here several times. There are a lot of examples in this movie of this attitude. So if you haven't seen the movie, there are three high school senior boys getting ready to graduate, and Jonah Hill's character, Seth, is, I mean, he is extremely demanding. Really, he's just really mean. And I mean, his character kind of ruined the movie for me. I don't know why they had to make him such a terrible person. But so there's these three friends. So there's Jonah Hill's character, Seth, and then Michael Cera's character, Evan. And then I forget the actor's name that plays Fogel. So if you haven't seen the movie, to make a long story short, Seth wants liquor for a party that he's going to impress some girl. And so Fogel goes out on a limb and gets a fake ID. He takes all this risk. He goes into the liquor store with a fake ID to buy liquor for Seth So he's really putting himself out there. He's taking all the risk, right? And Seth and Evan are outside the liquor store waiting for Fogel to come out with the liquor when, long, complicated story, but the cops show up and Seth thinks that Fogel has been caught and Fogel is being arrested for trying to buy liquor with a fake ID. Now, there's absolutely no concern for him on Seth's part. Michael Cera's character is different. He has empathy, but on Seth's part, he is not the least bit concerned about what's happening with Fogel. He has absolutely zero appreciation or recognition for the risk that Fogel took and for the consequences now that he's paying for. His character sees Fogel as somebody that has failed him, and he's swearing and he's yelling and he's just angry. There's absolutely no concern, no empathy, no guilt for pressuring Fogel to do this in the first place. And I think this is a really, and there, if you watch the movie, there's so many examples like this, but it's a really good example of the way that a narcissist expects you to, I mean, they don't care how much you hurt yourself and how much you sacrifice and the consequences you suffer trying to give them what they want. If you don't deliver it, if something goes wrong and they don't have what they want at the end, they're mad at you. They blame you, and they don't care how much you gave up or how hard you tried or what you sacrificed. So this is a way that a narcissist will blame you for not being good enough when really there were circumstances outside of your control. And you really tried. You really did everything you could, and maybe you even suffered some really severe consequences. They have no recognition of how much you've given up. You didn't fall hard enough on your sword for them if they didn't get what they want. And that alone can make them think of you as somebody who's not good enough for them. And the last reason I'm going to talk about that a narcissist might suddenly think you're not good enough for them is you tried to hold them accountable. This is a huge one. Narcissists expect you to accept everything they do, to forgive them immediately for any wrongs they commit. And if you don't do that, then you're a traitor and you're mean. And so holding them accountable isn't even necessarily, you know, sitting there saying, well, because you did this, I'm now going to do this. It could just simply be remembering something terrible they did to you. Or, you know, maybe every time you lend them money, they never ever pay you back. And now they're asking you for more money. And you're saying, well, you didn't pay me back last time. You're holding them accountable, right? That is unacceptable to a narcissist, for you to have the audacity to remember what they did last time. And if you try to hold them accountable for anything, you are going to not be good enough for them. You're going to be a traitor. And they're going to say things to you like, you can't just let things go. Or why do you have to make such a big deal out of everything? Or why do you have to keep bringing up the past? Why are you so focused on the past? And this can make you feel like maybe you make too big of a deal out of things. Maybe you're holding up, maybe you're not a forgiving enough person. Maybe you're holding a grudge, when really you're just remembering what this person has done to you. And there is no reason to forgive somebody in the sense of pretending they never did this thing when they aren't even expressing any kind of acknowledgement or remorse. So to a narcissist, forgiveness means, at least coming from you, forgiveness means that you pretend that whatever they did never ever happened. You never bring it up again. You expect zero acknowledgement, zero genuine apology for what they did. You pretend it never ever happened. That's what the narcissist expects from you. And if you don't do that for them, they're going to try to convince you that you're the one with the problem. You're the one who holds on to grudges and you can't let things go, when anybody who's dealt with a narcissist long-term knows that they're the ones who hold grudges for things that really don't matter. They're the ones who can never let anything go. They're the ones who will never, ever forgive you for things that you didn't even do, or things that they misunderstood or misperceived. but they are going to turn that around and try to convince you that you're the one who can't forgive anybody. You're the one that holds grudges. When you're coming to the end of a narcissistic relationship, or you're going through a period of time where the narcissist is being extremely critical of you and making you feel like you're not good enough, like their disappointment is your failure, their abuse is your fault, it can be really hard to think clearly. It can be really hard to see these things for what they really are, because the narcissist is so adamant that you're the one that has failed them, that you're the disappointment, that you're not good enough. But really, to be good enough for a narcissist would mean giving up things that are really important for your well-being. If you are struggling with this idea that you aren't good enough, you know, somebody else was more attractive to them, or somebody else met their needs better than you, something was wrong with you, I want you to really think about where it was you really went wrong. Where specifically did you fail them? What could you have done differently? How is it that you are actually responsible for this? How could you have improved yourself in a way that would have pleased them? And I think if you really dig deep into this and you try to come up with specific things that you actually had control over, that you actually could have done to be good enough, you'll find that even if you were the ideal partner, the ideal person that is emotionally healthy, that knows how to meet your partner's needs, knows how to communicate, has a strong sense of self, confidence, has a lot of empathy, and knows how to communicate, knows how to be reciprocal, all that, you know, if you really had it all together, the narcissist wouldn't really have any use for you. What narcissists need in their life, what a narcissist thinks is good enough, and what a narcissist thinks you're supposed to be, is someone who allows them to control them, someone who has a very small sense of self, somebody who will allow the narcissist to tell them who they are and what they think and what they believe. Somebody who will fall on their sword over and over again for somebody who has zero appreciation for them, somebody who won't hold them accountable, somebody who will just ignore all the awful things that they do. This is what they're looking for. And is this really what you want to be in order to stay in the good graces of somebody who could just demonize you any second because something outside of your control happened to go wrong? In short, I think that I could wrap up this whole video by saying, like, you already are good enough. You've always been good enough for the narcissist. But the narcissist is never going to see that. They're never going to recognize the sacrifices you make. They cannot see your heart. They cannot see your value. They cannot see who you really are. And if you could ever really be good enough for the narcissist, there would be nothing in it for you. I hope this helps. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment below any ideas you have for me for future videos. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like this video and would like to see more like it in the future. Until next time, thanks. Bye. Oh, let's say hi to Marshall. He made it all the way through the video and he only made a little bit of noise and tried to use my drawers over there for a scratching post. What are you doing? Do you want to say hi? They all want to see you. Oh, sorry, buddy. Look at him. Oh my gosh, he's so cute. Say goodbye. Say goodbye.